Hey everyone, I'm Claire Liu and I'm the CEO of Know Your Company. And today I have a really special guest. I have Rob Walling, who is the co-founder of Drip, an email marketing automation software that actually, I don't know if you know this, Rob, we actually use at Know Your Company. We
You
love
know,
it.
I didn't. Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and it's only one of many things or ways that Rob and I are connected. Rob is, a serial entrepreneur. He started multiple companies in the past. He speaks at a ton of conferences. He runs a conference called MicroConf, which I actually happen to speak at. And so just been a big admirer of your work over the years, Rob, everything you've built. And I know recently you and your wife Sherry actually just published a book, which I
That's right.
highly recommend for people to check out just by the title. I believe it's The Entrepreneur's Guide to Keeping Your Shit Together. So I
That's
think
exactly right.
I think we could all probably read a page or two out of that just based off the title. But yeah, an honor to have you here today, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
Cool. Well, so Rob, I've been asking all sorts of folks this past year this one question about leadership. And what it is what's something you wish you would have learned earlier as a leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll have to go back and listen to all the prior answers. I did not on purpose so that I wouldn't, accidentally say someone else's. I wished that I had learned that I didn't need all the answers. I don't need all the answers as a leader, and that
Mm,
hiring people that are better than I am at something, and then when a problem comes up, looking around the room and saying, "I don't know. What do you think?"
mm,
And it's not always that. It's not always putting it back on everybody else, but um, for me leading, 15 years ago when I first started in my 20s, I was all nervous, like, well, I have to be like the boss and I have to know the answers. And when people come to me, I have to be able to say, well, this is what we should do. And over time, I realized, no, I work with really smart people,
hmm.
especially if I'm hiring well. And my most recent experience with that, is at Drip. And it's the best team I've ever assembled. It's the best team I've ever worked with. And now when problems come up, it is always a look around the room and saying, someone here knows this answer. It may be me, but it's most likely going to be one of you. And
Interesting.
I wished I had known that a lot sooner.
Wow. Yeah, I can totally relate. Oh my goodness. I think there's something almost inherent in how our culture even thinks about leadership, right? That leaders know the answers. Like that's the whole point.
Hmm.
And so I love that realization. I also think something really interesting that you just talked about is how you feel like Drip, the current company that you founded, is your best team assembled to date, right?
Hmm.
So tell me about, was it something different you then did in the hiring process or in thinking through as you're coaching people, or would you like how why is it different, and in what way is this idea that you don't have to be the one knowing all the answers? What role did that play? And so that, I mean, that's a bold statement.
Hmm.
Best team to date I've ever assembled. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a couple reasons that I was able to, or that I say that, or that I was able to build that team. I say it because it's true, and I
Mm,
enjoy my work so much
yeah.
more, working with these folks, and they're whatever scale. If you were to say 1 to 10 as developers, 1 to 10 as coworkers, 1 to 10 as whatever, just
Mm,
across the board, these, the folks I work with now are better. And I've worked with great people. I've been, coding essentially for 20 years, almost coding and founding software companies for almost 20 years. The reason I was able to do it differently this time was a couple things. One, I had full control. Like I built it from square one. I was employee number one,
got it.
Derek, my co-founder, number two, and so there was no one kind of foisted on me. The other thing is since Drip did grow very quickly, I had budget to hire at a level that I used to not be able to. I used to hire a lot of contractors
Sure.
and just I needed cheap talent because I only, if one of my apps was making 20 grand a month, it's like you can only hire someone so good and still pay the bills.
Sure.
But Drip had the growth and the revenue to cover it. And the third thing is I had the luxury, well, there's four things. I'm going to keep going. The
Keep
third was
going. Keep going.
my network is the biggest it's ever been. As you
Mm,
said, I have a conference now and I have all this history and the blog and the podcast and just all this stuff that I've done that it enabled me to kind of have a reputation to draw people. But the fourth reason that I think is perhaps of all those,
mm,
one of the most important is we hired slowly and we were very picky. We turned
mm.
down dozens of candidates for every person that we have wound up bringing on. And so it has meant at times that we don't, hire as fast as I would have liked. And as a result, sometimes the roadmap isn't moving as fast as I would have liked.
Sure.
But it was a long-term view. I've been working on Drip for 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It is a long-term view of, in the end, 5 years from now, this team will be phenomenal if we just slow it down a little bit versus making that snap decision. Well, no, just say yes to this person. And then you're a year down the line, you're like, oh my God, I've built a toxic culture, or I now have to fire 2 people because they're not working out.
Absolutely. I think that's tremendous advice, almost so much more difficult to practice than it is than it is talking about. Because I think the temptation, especially for folks who are funded or who have the luxury of being able to spend, cash upfront pretty easily to hire folks, you can't move as fast if you don't have the right people. So that temptation is definitely there. What sort of checks or questions or processes did you put in place, or how did you think about consciously? I mean, it sounds like a very conscious decision of, I'm going to slow down this hiring process and we're going to wait it out. Like, how do you make that call? How do you decide when that is, like, especially, as, you start off as a self-funded, company, right? You don't have that luxury. You have competitors who are funded. I mean, how do you grapple with that as a founder, as a leader?
Yeah, I think, I didn't make the deliberate decision to slow it down as much as I made the deliberate decision to hire very carefully, which by its nature, the result is that it does slow down. So I wish we could hire faster. But the checks, as you were saying, is, we have a few layers of interviews, and that first interview is all about personality, and it's all about probing into things and catching what are the yellow flags and what are the red flags. And if we talk to someone with no yellow flags, I'm suspicious, like we didn't get their true self. Because if I was in an interview, you would pick up on things, and it's like, yeah, Rob's really good at this, and Rob's going to kind of be a pain in the ass about that, right? Or Rob's not going to be great at this. I mean, you're just going to know, like, no one is infallible. And so if I don't pick up on at least a yellow flag or two, we actually dig further. And then you start seeing patterns. I mean, I've done literally hundreds and hundreds of interviews over the course of the 20 years, of hiring developers and product people. And so I think it's, at a certain point, it's trusting gut, but it's also we have 4 or 5 different people who talk to the candidate over the course of a couple weeks. And we do pair programming now, which has been a real game changer for us. A 1-hour pair programming interview to look at not just the technical. It's not, do they know the right words? It's like, how are they to sit next to for 1 hour and code with? How does that feel? So I think we've really upped our game there. And it's, as usual, it's, if in doubt, it's probably a no.
Yeah, I think that's so wise. I want to go back, Rob, to to the original sort of statement you made as the answer to this question about, letting go of having to be the person with the answers. Talk to me about the time prior to that revelation, right? When you felt like you needed to know the answers. I mean, what was the cost of that? Was there some event or something that happened or a conversation that you had where it caused you to realize, oh gosh, like the whole point of having a team, I guess, is for me to not know everything? Or I'm very curious about that.
What caused that mindset shift?
Right. What caused it, or if there were any, if you got burned because of it at any moment.
It was the cost of it was that it was a mental cost, right? It was having the burden of constantly having to go from a manager's point of view or a CEO point of view where you're kind of at 10,000 feet and then someone comes with something and it's like, all right, I need to dig in and actually look at this code and make a decision, right? And it's like, this is taxing on mentally because you only have so much good glucose in a day, right? That you can ship interesting things or make decision fatigue sets in. And so that was probably the biggest cost for me is I just could only make so many decisions and I was making too many I should not have. And the tipping point was 2 things. One, it was eventually realizing that was just stupid. And then 2, it was starting to work with better people. And Derek was Derek the first? Well, there was a support guy before that who took everything, named Andy, who took everything off my plate. And I started realizing, wait a minute, this is very interesting. Like he made, and at a certain point, he's really good, fully remote, never met him in person. We've worked together for 8 years or whatever. He started saying, hey, I think I'm just going to make some decisions about some stuff like that. I'm checking in with you. And I was like, fine, do it. And, I would look back and be like, he made 20 decisions last month that normally I would have, prior I would have asked him to run by me. And one of them was wrong, wrong in my book, or it didn't live up to what I would have done. The cost of that one decision compared to the 19 I didn't have to make was just so it was such an offset that I was like, this is a no-brainer. I need to find more people like him, and then I need to do this again, And then finding my co-founder, Derek, co-founder Drip, pretty quickly, we talked through what the original incarnation of Drip would be on my kitchen table. And then I said, all right, you let me know when you have something to show me. And it was like 6 or 8 weeks later, he comes back, which is, I never did with developers, right? He was a contractor at the time.
Sure. And
eventually became my co-founder. I would never do that because it was always like, send me weekly updates with the this and the screenshot, and then I can tweak the this and the copy, and he came back after 6 or 8 weeks, and I was like, damn, that's really good. Let's tweak these 2 things. And it was like, working with someone of his caliber really makes this a lot easier. And during that time, I was able to focus on marketing and all this other stuff. And so those were kind of the events that led me to that.
Absolutely. I think something that, what you're talking about, one thought that it evokes is, I talk with so many emerging managers, right? So new managers, first-time managers who find and struggle with that decision point of how much do I trust? How much do I let go? I don't know if it's the caliber, I'm going to see the caliber of the work that's there. I mean, what advice would you have for folks in that situation who feel like, they're not sure if they're ready to give that space? I mean, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that, trust but verify is kind of what I start with people, to basically trust them to make the right call and then see if they did. And over time, you will learn to trust them more. And if they're doing well, and if they're not, then they're probably not right for the role. I think that's a big thing, right? It's the, kind of fire fast type thing. And in our world of startups, when every person counts and you have a team of 5 or a team of 7, that everyone needs to be high achieving. And so I think when a new person would start, it was a slow trust building, but in both directions, to be honest. And coming back to your original question about leadership, that's probably the one thing. You didn't ask this, but if I were to think like what is the one thing as a leader that is my job to do, and it's instill trust in both directions. That's what I strive for. And that ultimately leads to loyalty. I used to say it's instill loyalty, but I realize now trust comes first.
Talk to me about the difference. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. Like I'm with you. I want to hear more.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, trust is just a matter of like, I'm going to, from my perspective as a leader, it's like, I'm going to give you stuff, or I'm going to tell you what, help you figure out what to do. And I'm going to trust that you're going to do the best you can, and that you're going to come to me when you have questions, and that you're going to deliver a good product. Trust in the other direction to me, from the person, my colleague, I believe is that I have your back in every situation. That when a customer, screams at you on the phone, that customer, I either have a conversation or I fire the customer. That I do not let my people get abused, right? And I've done that many times, email and all that kind of stuff. That I have your back when the database goes down on a weekday, that I don't just push the developer or the DBA to do it, that I'm actually sitting there as well trying to figure stuff out. It's like, and that doesn't scale when you're at 50 people, but when you're at 5, yes, you trust that I essentially have your back. And over time, so trust is something you can develop by showing up and by doing what I was talking about. And then I think loyalty develops with trust over time, and loyalty becomes less of I know you're going to be there and more of I want to have your back as well, if that makes sense. It's a mutual feeling of I'm willing to take either of us are willing to take a figurative bullet, in business to be able to support you. And that may mean, boy, I am going to work this weekend, even though you didn't ask, or I'm going to work this weekend and not resent it because you did ask, and I know that you don't do this often, and I know that you need this, or whatever it is. I mean, we didn't work a lot of weekends, but those are examples, right? It's like I'm willing to go the extra mile for you, both as the founder and as the person, the developer, or the customer success person.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that you've emphasized that it's, one of the main roles of the leader to instill trust because I couldn't, agree more in many ways. Trust, it's the oil of the machine, right? Nothing functions without that sense of trust and you've got my back, you've got, I've got yours. And that when you argue, we have our best intentions in mind. I'm not trying to,
Yep.
you know, screw you over. I'm not trying to take credit for something. And I think as a leader, again, our mental models around what leadership is about decisions, it's about vision, it's about charisma. Trust doesn't get brought up very often. So I
Hmm.
really appreciate you sharing that.
Yep,
Cool.
for sure.
Well, hey, Rob, thank you so much again for your time today. It's been a blast to get to talk to you.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it.